The Walmart human oven incident is one of the most unsettling and perplexing mysteries ever investigated on Reddit.
Female has locked in an oven in the bakery. Oven is on, unsure if the staff are able to turn it off.
On the night of October 19, 2024, emergency responders were dispatched to a Walmart on Mumford Road in Halifax, Nova Scotia. The call they received was unlike anything they'd handled before. A death so strange and inexplicable that it would spawn a complex investigation that police still won't talk about to this day. The story broke to the public on Reddit through eyewitness accounts of people who claimed to have been at the store that night. "I was there last night. They started ushering everyone to the front of the store. It wasn't until we got all the way to the cash that employees said we couldn't check out, to leave our purchases behind and leave." This wasn't a case of someone suffering from a typical medical emergency. The scale of the response made it clear something incredibly serious had happened inside. Store staff quickly began guiding customers out, quietly and efficiently. The goal was to clear the premises without drawing attention. No public announcements, no panic, and ideally, no cameras. All the employees were sent outside to stand at the front wall with their backs to the wall. It wasn't just about keeping people safe. It looked like an effort to control movement, communication, and documentation. But regardless, eventually word got out about what had really happened in the Walmart that night. "Saw this in a Facebook group I'm on. Is this true?" Underneath the Mumford Walmart's announcement that they would be closing until further notice was a comment revealing that an employee had been baked to death in the bakery's walk-in oven. And unfortunately, it was true. Over the next few days, news outlets reported all of the details that authorities were willing to tell them. Out of respect for the victim and her grieving family, we will be refraining from sharing her name and image. But what we will say is that she was a 19-year-old Sikh woman who came to Canada with her mother from India in 2022, where they settled in Halifax, Nova Scotia, a relatively quiet coastal city known for its universities and historic waterfront. They had been in Canada for only 2 years when the incident occurred. How exactly the young woman ended up in the bakery that night remains unclear. Did she regularly work in that department? Was she asked to clean the area? Or was her presence there, as many users on Reddit suggested, indicative of something sinister? As news reports began to release more details about the incident, we were able to piece together more of a timeline from that night. The young Walmart employee's mother, who also worked at the same store location, apparently realized something was wrong when her daughter stopped responding to her phone. By all accounts, her daughter was apparently not the type to ignore her phone, especially when they had arranged to leave their workplace together at the end of the night. But as time passed with no word, concern turned to fear. Her mother began looking all over the store for her, asking around, checking the usual places. It was during this search that someone reportedly noticed something disturbing, a strange substance seeping from the bakery's industrial oven. That's where they found her body. The Maritime Sikh Society reports that her charred remains were found inside the walk-in oven in the bakery after a few hours. It was approximately 9:30 p.m. when Halifax Regional Police received the call. Emergency dispatch audio later confirmed what responders were told.
Female has locked in an oven in the bakery. Oven is on, unsure if the staff are able to turn it off.
The first responder asked,
with the person trapped in the oven there, do you have the power shut off for that? Does the staff know to turn the power off?
But the young woman had already lost her life, and according to officials on the scene, the person was out of the oven upon arrival. But the cause and manner of death remained officially undetermined. If authorities knew more than they were saying, they weren't disclosing it. The Nova Scotia Medical Examiner Service had not, or perhaps could not, conclusively state how she died, or whether her death was accidental, intentional, or a homicide. Multiple agencies were involved: Halifax Regional Police, Occupational Health and Safety, the Department of Labor, Skills and Immigration. A Walmart spokesperson referred to the situation as a very complex matter. But that phrase doesn't begin to capture the unease hanging over this case. A young woman was found dead inside a Walmart bakery oven, and no one knows or is willing to say how she got there. People were understandably horrified. And in this age of hyper-surveillance, where nearly every aisle, register, and loading dock is under the watchful eye of a camera, it felt almost unthinkable that someone could be baked in a commercial oven and no one saw a thing. As one Reddit user plainly put it, grocery stores have cameras everywhere. The whole thing is likely on video. It was a reasonable assumption, logical even, but not necessarily true. Alleged former Walmart employees began weighing in. One comment, in particular, came from someone who claimed to have worked in asset protection, the department responsible for surveillance and loss prevention. Unfortunately, they don't have cameras everywhere, and, of course, each store is different with their camera layouts and angles. There were no cameras in our bakery or deli, and the cameras that were outside those departments were angled in such a frustrating way with no view of the bakery counter, half of the deli counter, or the entrance or exit to those departments. This wasn't an isolated revelation. Other users echo the same unfortunate possibility. I worked at the Walmart bakery for 2 years, and the cameras never worked because it wasn't much of a concern area. It raises a troubling implication. The places that see the most human labor, slicing, baking, lifting, cleaning, and therefore have the highest likelihood of workplace injuries, may be getting the least oversight. In the end, it is very likely that there is no surveillance footage that explains how the young woman ended up in that oven. But as Redditors began to speculate, one potential explanation rose in popularity. Based on the time, I'd imagine that it somehow involves the cleaning of the oven, which is part of the closing routine. But many Walmart employees on the internet who have been tasked with cleaning one of these walk-in ovens in the past were quick to point out that there shouldn't have been any reason for the young woman to physically step inside the oven to clean it. Some even posted videos of themselves demonstrating the cleaning process to prove it. Despite the video proof, a few supposed Walmart employees on Reddit insisted that some walk-in oven models at certain store locations required the cleaner to enter the oven. Former Walmart worker here. Every day at night you are required to clean and sanitize them, and to do this you need to walk inside the oven. With no cameras, eyewitnesses, or any consensus on whether it is standard protocol to enter the walk-in ovens when cleaning them, at this point, it seems impossible to know exactly why the young woman was in the oven in the first place. But regardless of the reason, there are a number of strange circumstances surrounding this case that have led many to feel that the employee's death was no accident, not just because of what happened, but because of what shouldn't have. Here's another video where a bakery employee demonstrates exactly what many on Reddit are trying to explain. The door doesn't latch on its own. It has to be closed deliberately. Look closely. The door only latches when he forces it. The resistance built into the door seal and locking mechanism makes it impossible for the oven to close on its own. And this mechanism isn't just unique to this particular oven at this particular Walmart. No, there are a multitude of videos from other employees demonstrating the same thing. All of the ovens are made so that it is impossible for the door to swing closed, which in their eyes means that someone locked her in the oven with the intent of ending her life. But hang on, before we jump to any conclusions, isn't it possible that, while she was inside the oven, for whatever reason, someone mistakenly locked her inside? It can't be entirely ruled out, especially when there's Jose Milena's case as precedent. This happened back in 2012 at Bumblebee Foods in Santa Fe Springs, California. Jose Milena, a 62-year-old employee, was working before dawn loading a massive 30-foot industrial oven, essentially a giant pressure cooker used to steam cook tens of thousands of pounds of canned tuna. This oven operates at around 270 degrees Fahrenheit, more than enough to cause fatal injuries in minutes. Here's what happened. A coworker, assuming Jose had stepped away to the bathroom, loaded the oven with 12,000 pounds of tuna and turned it on, unaware Jose was still inside. 2 hours later, when the oven was finally turned off and opened, Jose was found deceased. Now, the official safety report from the California Division of Occupational Safety and Health revealed a glaring issue. The oven system required operators to occasionally enter the oven to fix carts that became stuck. This is inherently dangerous. Following the accident, Bumblebee Foods agreed to pay a $6 million settlement, the largest ever in California, for a workplace safety violation involving a single victim. The settlement included funds to replace all outdated ovens with automated models, restitution to Jose's family, and fines supporting workplace safety programs. Additionally, the company's former safety manager pled guilty to willfully violating safety protocols, and the plant operations director faced penalties and community service related to the incident. Tragic accidents like this can happen. If someone closed the door on the young Walmart employee, it could have been just that, an accident. A deadly workplace accident that Reddit points out should be easily preventable. Fucking hell, how does something like that not have a lockout-tagout setup? A fair question. Lockout-tagout is a standard safety protocol in many industries. The idea is simple. Before an employee begins any maintenance or cleaning on dangerous machinery, power is shut off and tagged, so it physically can't be turned back on until the person servicing it is out and clear. The dumb part about the oven is it would not be hard to make a lockout-tagout setup where when locked and tagged out it can't be closed. Simple, cheap, obvious, not done. But then there is this Reddit comment, among others, that brings up another one of the oven's safety features that challenges the entire theory that she was locked in the oven accidentally. The oven supposedly has both an emergency alarm and a latch to open the door from inside. Unless the victim happened to knock themselves out by hitting their head or slipping, there's a good chance that they were unconscious when they entered. We can see this safety mechanism in action in a video shared by a Walmart bakery worker, who gives a hands-on look at one of these walk-in ovens. The employee steps inside the oven and shuts it behind her, but she is not locked inside. There's an emergency release mechanism designed to prevent entrapment. With a simple push, she easily opens the door, demonstrating that any person inside should, in theory, be able to exit at will. And again, based on the multiple demonstration videos from other employees showing the same thing, it seems this safety mechanism is standard with Walmart walk-in ovens. So if it should be easy for anyone to get out of these ovens, how could the young woman in Halifax be burned alive in one? I work with these types of walk-in ovens every day. If the victim was conscious in the oven, the only way she could not get out is if someone blocked the door or put a pin into the door release lever. And once again, we come back to being faced with the uncomfortable possibility that the young woman's death was intentional. But what if the young woman was poorly trained? Could something as basic as poor onboarding or inadequate safety instruction have contributed to her death? Some people say no. In fact, one commenter put it rather bluntly. I've worked in places with walk-in fridges and an oven. That was the first thing they show you when they are instructing you on maintenance and cleaning procedures. And that's the point, isn't it? When your equipment includes spaces that can physically entrap and kill a person, whether freezing or incinerating, emergency protocol is supposed to be lesson 1, not an afterthought. But that's the ideal. And then there's the reality. Another user shared, "Unfortunately for us, they didn't actually show us how to use it. One of the girls got shut in a walk-in freezer and she ended up clawing the safety release out of the door. She panicked so hard that it never occurred to her to push it. It ended up broken. Someone heard her banging it on the door and let her out." Even when safety mechanisms exist, even when the instructions are technically somewhere in a handbook, panic can override everything, especially if no one ever showed you how it works in the first place. Now, add that to what one user suggested. The talk I heard is that this particular Walmart has had a high turnover of employees at all levels. It's entirely possible the training on where the emergency release was and how to operate it wasn't done. In a place where there's a high rate of staff rotating in and out, training potentially could be reduced to figure it out as you go. Worse still, another comment suggests the door could have malfunctioned due to management negligence. Apparently, a person who did work at that Walmart publicly stated they had an issue with the door latch not functioning properly for a period of time and that it was not repaired. When you hear that a 19-year-old woman was found dead inside a commercial oven, your mind scrambles for explanations. And for many people, it can immediately jump to the most extreme. But what if the reality is something depressingly simple? Equipment failure. Craig Walsh, president of the Eastern Provinces Council of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, said in an interview, "There's obviously a lot we don't know, but there's usually a lot of safety protocols in place for equipment like this. But the safety protocols only work if they're checked on later and verified that they're still operating. Commercial walk-in ovens aren't supposed to trap people. They're designed with safety in mind. That includes the door latches preventing it from closing on its own and the interior safety release preventing someone from being trapped inside. But what if everything fails?" One Reddit user noted, "I used to work in a Sobeys with an oven just like this. They have a safety release lock on the inside in theory, but I know ours was notorious for jamming. Wouldn't be surprised if it's the same situation here." So even when safety features exist, they can fail or be neglected, or both. But then there's also this intriguing demonstration of an employee showcasing how the emergency release mechanism works from inside a commercial bakery oven. What's striking is this: the door doesn't open at first attempt. It requires a deliberate second push. That detail matters because it challenges the notion that someone could easily get out using the emergency latch. And then you have comments like this from Reddit. 20 plus years ago, I worked in some bakeries with an oven that size. Maybe same model. Perhaps the equipment in use was outdated. And with age comes wear. With wear comes the increasing likelihood of malfunction. And speaking of malfunction or lack of training, Walmart deli worker here. The comment on the post says that there needs to be a safety release lock in the inside. If it's the same one as at my Walmart, there is one. Although the release gets hot, I can't imagine someone picking the alternative. Also, I'm pretty sure I read she was cleaning it. The oven shouldn't have been on and definitely should have had to hit the button to start the cook cycle. There was a release, supposedly, but it gets hot. That alone is baffling. A safety mechanism that becomes dangerous in a high temperature setting. Isn't that the very definition of design failure? But then again, why would an oven be hot during cleaning? And even if she was stuck in the oven due to some sequence of malfunctions, why wouldn't anyone have heard the young woman's cries for help? According to one individual claiming to have experience working near commercial ovens, they're not soundproof, but with the sound of the ovens running as well as the sounds of everything else going on around the ovens, it's not out of the question that nobody would hear someone trapped inside. However, let's for a moment entertain another possibility. What if there were no screams at all? In October 2024, just weeks before the Walmart oven death, Ontario's Ministry of Labour launched an investigation after a man was found dead inside a walk-in freezer at a Zur's grocery store in Cambridge. The discovery prompted police and provincial authorities to investigate. However, it was soon reported that the cause of death was not due to being trapped in the freezer at all. As one user on Reddit wrote, "This was a sudden death, and they found them in there after." So the employee had experienced a fatal medical emergency while inside the freezer. Their death and the freezer were unrelated. That brings us to another possibility, that the Walmart employee may have suffered a medical emergency in the oven before the oven was ever activated. As one commenter put it, there could be a chance she just had a medical emergency. I have seen a guy just pass out and fall into a cookie dough vat. The other workers didn't notice until body parts started coming down the line. It doesn't have to be a murder conspiracy. Another user says, think the kindest possibility here is that some heart problem or aneurysm killed her instantly and she just happened to be in the oven at the time. Or potentially, if she was cleaning, I wonder if she could have passed out from the chemicals and then hit her head, causing bleeding. It's a tragic but conceivable scenario. But even if that were the case, why was the oven turned on unless someone manually initiated the baking cycle? Could another employee have been unaware that someone was collapsed on the floor inside? A former Walmart employee who worked night shifts offers some insight. Could someone activate the oven's controls without seeing what's inside? Yes, you can walk up the oven's side and the control panel would be on the front. Then there's the question of visibility. So it has a window? No one saw her. I mean, maybe she had a sudden medical event and fell where they couldn't see her, but this feels nefarious. According to several sources, many walk-in ovens do have glass windows on their doors, allowing workers to check on the trays without opening them. So how could someone be inside burning without being seen? Here's a comment from a former employee. The thin window looking in had so much grime on it that you had to cup your hands around your eyes to barely see anything. If someone had no reason to believe anyone was in there, it's not unimaginable they might simply close the door, press a button, and walk away. Especially during closing hours, when routine procedures can blur into muscle memory. But then, according to other Reddit users, it's unimaginable that someone would have an innocent reason for turning on the oven at that hour in the first place. Depending on the model type, they have an auto on and off time. Most of them are set to come on at 4 or 5 a.m. and shut off at approximately 8 p.m. So if it got turned on after 8 p.m., it was turned on manually. So if this oven has the auto on-off time, it was no accident that it was turned on. It may have been an accident that someone was inside when they turned it on, but they meant to turn that oven on. This adds another layer to the timeline. Emergency calls came in around 9:30 p.m., which would be after the automatic shutoff time for many of these ovens. Does the bakery even use the oven at that hour? According to some familiar with the routine at their store, all baking typically happens during the morning shift. I believe that this incident happened in the evening shift. At least at my store, all the baking happens in the morning shift, so the oven should have been cold. Also, they don't automatically turn on when the door closes, so someone would have had to push the start button. If during the evening these ovens were supposed to be off and there is no normal explanation as to why someone would turn it on, then this brings us yet again to the difficult but unavoidable question. Was this deliberate? An overwhelming number of people believe this wasn't just a tragic accident. They believe it was murder. This is impossible to be an accident. Ovens don't lock on their own. They have emergency release handles, and you have to also start the oven on its program. Yes, it's preheated, ready to go, but everything about this, someone had to do this to her. This is a clear-cut case of murder. There's also the eerie silence. The absence of reports about screams or banging raises questions of its own. The fact that nobody is reporting hearing screaming or loud noises, banging, etc., makes me wonder if she was unconscious and then placed inside the oven. Some users speculated further. The bakery areas don't have cameras. Someone could have strangled her right there in the oven beforehand, which seems easier than waiting for an oven to heat up and then shoving someone inside, or waiting for it to heat up with someone inside. I suspect she was assaulted and possibly killed elsewhere, and this was to cover up DNA evidence. And as grim as it may be, these theories of murders have a way of feeling unfortunately plausible, especially in the absence of concrete answers and with so many variables at play. However, there was a specifically troubling wave of speculation that we want to address. A disturbing number of Redditors began making baseless accusations that blamed the victim's mother for this tragedy. One piece of work in particular dropped this comment: "Some fear think it was the mother that killed her own daughter as an honor killing because she was dating a white guy. Would be incredibly if true, and put their GoFundMe in a new light." We want to be very clear. This comment is heartlessly making a very serious accusation against a grieving mother by spreading a completely baseless rumor that, frankly, we wouldn't be surprised if it was just concocted in the user's mind and posted for the purpose of attention and spreading hate. The worst part is that this wasn't an obscure buried comment. No, this comment was one of the most upvoted in the thread. It even received awards. And it wasn't the only one like this either. There were many examples of upvoted comments like this spread across the various threads discussing this case. Accusations like these often come from a place of fear and misunderstanding. One comment sums this up plainly: spreading unsubstantiated rumors that it was an honor killing just because the victim was a Sikh girl is some really ugly racism on your part. You should be ashamed for piling onto the hate this poor woman is getting. Accusing someone of murdering their own child based solely on the fact that they found her is not just unfounded, it's cruel and irresponsible. These kinds of claims belong in the hands of professional investigators, not public forums rife with speculation. Luckily, there were other Redditors who understood this. Let's not harass that lady. We don't want another dingo ate my baby situation. And don't forget how good Reddit was at catching the Boston bomber. As the last comment mentioned, in order to understand how dangerous finger-pointing in the dark can be, look no further than the fallout from the Reddit manhunt for the people responsible for the bombing of the Boston Marathon in 2013, a stark example of how online accusations can ruin innocent lives. It's a long and complex story that we've already covered in another video, and we will leave a link to in the description of this video for anyone interested. But for now, just know that accusations like the ones we have discussed have devastating real-world consequences. But now that we have gone through all of the speculation around this mystery, let's recap all of the more reasonable theories. Theory 1. It was all an accident. The young woman may have been clearing the oven when she accidentally locked herself inside. Normally, this shouldn't be possible. The oven requires someone to physically close the door with force. It won't start on its own, and there's an emergency release mechanism inside. 3 separate safety features would have had to fail simultaneously. 1. The oven door closing unexpectedly. 2. The oven starting without a manual command. And 3. The internal releasing failing or being too hot to use. It's incredibly unlikely, but not impossible. Theory 2. Someone accidentally locked her in. In this version, the young woman may have been inside the oven, already unconscious due to a medical emergency, when another employee closed the oven and started it not knowing that their coworker was inside. For this to occur, the employee would need to use the oven at an unusual hour, not notice her body on the floor, possibly due to grime on the window. This theory relies heavily on very specific timing and a considerable amount of inattention. Theory 3. Deliberate harm. The last possibility is that she did not accidentally become trapped in the oven. Instead, it suggests that another individual used the oven to murder her or dispose of the body, meaning she was either already unconscious and unable to resist, or had been killed before being put in the oven. While these theories offered possibilities, without all the facts, it was hard to say which, if any, might be true. That was until the police released an update that went completely unnoticed by those speculating on Reddit. After the internet's rampant theorizing died down, Halifax Regional Police quietly released their findings in an update via Constable Martin Cromwell. He said,
"As a part of the investigation, we conducted several interviews, reviewed video footage, and worked very closely with our partners at the Nova Scotia Department of Labour and the Medical Examiner Service. We thank everyone for their patience as we worked through these processes. Our job at the Halifax Regional Police is to investigate criminality. Today, I can share that our investigation has not led us to suspect foul play. We do not believe anyone else was involved in the circumstances surrounding the woman's death. The Department of Labour and the Medical Examiner Service are continuing their work, but we do not believe the death to be suspicious. We acknowledge the public's interest in this case and that there are questions that may never have answers. Out of respect for the family, we expect this to be our final update on this case.
So the police have finished their investigation and come to the conclusion that no one else was involved in the young woman's death. They have determined that nothing criminal in nature has occurred, and therefore, in their eyes, their work here is done. Whether or not they have any answers as to how the woman could have been cooked alive in the walk-in oven at the Mumford Walmart, they are not saying, and they never will. Although this final update on the case leaves a lot of unanswered questions, it does rule out two major theories: the possibility of homicide and the idea that a coworker accidentally locked her in and started the oven. If no one else was involved, criminally or through oversight, then those narratives no longer apply. With the police investigation closed, the Nova Scotia Department of Labour have now taken over and are leading an ongoing workplace investigation. Spokesperson Sarah McNeil told CTV News, "Workplace investigations are complex and take time." However, she also disclosed a crucial piece of information previously unknown to the public. The oven was assessed and determined to have been operating as per the manufacturer's requirements. This now seals off another avenue of speculation. If the oven was functioning as intended, then a faulty door or safety latch could not have caused her to be trapped inside. Taken together with the previous update, this means all of the theories, equipment malfunction caused accident, coworker activated accident, and foul play, have all been officially ruled out. So that's it then. We're left with not even the slightest idea of how a tragedy like this could occur. Well, that's what we thought at first. But then, while looking back through the old Reddit threads speculating on the case, we found this buried comment. "I've heard from one of the victim's coworkers that this young girl was only 16 or 17 and had a habit of opening the door while it was on to warm herself. Yeah, I've seen people do that. Also use the freezer to cool off on hot days. You would sometimes get people who weren't even in the bakery come in to do that. Definitely happened while I was there." Since the commenter incorrectly cites the age of the deceased as 16 or 17, she was 19, we're not sure that we can really trust them for any insider knowledge. However, the scenario is worth considering. What if the young woman did have a habit of using the oven to warm up from the cold Canadian weather? Perhaps she would preheat the oven and later return to open the door and warm herself with the hot air as it rushed out of the oven. But what if this time she set the oven to a higher temperature than before, or let it preheat for longer than usual? The sudden rush of heat from opening the door in her face may have triggered a sudden medical event such as fainting, dizziness, or even a heart attack, causing her to fall forward into the oven where her body may have been heated to fatal temperatures. This theory would explain a number of confusing details. For example, it would explain why she was using the oven in the first place and why it was turned on at such a strange hour. Also, it would give an answer to the conflicting reports. Emergency dispatch stated she was locked in the oven, but dispatch logs indicate that she was out of the oven when responders arrived at the scene. Maybe she was never fully in the oven to begin with. Maybe the door was never closed, and the discrepancy arose from miscommunication during a literal game of telephone between the 911 caller, operator, and dispatch. But if that isn't the case, and she was actually killed from being sealed inside that oven while it was running, then we can't conceive of any logical way that could have occurred. And before you say she stepped inside and closed the door with the intent of dying, as far as we know, that is not possible, since the button on the outside still needs to be pressed while the door is closed in order for the oven to begin heating, and it will turn off if the door is opened. All of the questions surrounding this case may never have answers, and if they do, those answers may never be given to the public. What must remain above everything else is our respect for the young woman's life. Outside the Walmart where this tragedy occurred, hundreds gathered at a candlelight vigil, mourning her loss and honoring her memory. A GoFundMe also raised nearly 200,000 Canadian dollars to support her family in their time of need. As a teenager, she immigrated to Canada with her mother in 2022, bringing with her hope and determination. Her uncle described her as a perfectionist and full of intelligence, fondly remembering the way she called him Papa. The Maritime Sikh Society honored her as a young, beautiful girl who came to Canada with big dreams. Thank you for watching until the end of the video. If you would like to show your appreciation to all of the people in the credits who work full-time to make this possible, then consider hitting the like button and subscribing to our channel. It's the best thing you can do to help us keep making more videos, like this one about a mysterious death that took police 40 years to solve, with nothing but 3 strange clues, a pair of shoes, misplaced keys, and a chilling word scribbled on a piece of paper. Click the video on your screen to watch now.